Stuff I Want to Say with Chad Brooks. This episode, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to talk about making big decisions. I'm going to talk about Bible study and Bible reading. And then we'll just see what else comes up. But before we get going, if you haven't yet, I would appreciate just to cruise over to iTunes or the Apple Podcast Store or wherever you are catching this podcast and leave it a rating and review. That's tremendously helpful for us here at Stuff I Want to Say. As always, you can find the show notes over to this episode at revchadbrooks.com. This is episode 5, and so what we will find is revchadbrooks.com/005 will be the show notes, so you can catch any resources I've talked about, any links, or if you just want to leave a comment on the show notes, we'd appreciate that so much. So we've had couple of minutes of front matter already, so we will jump straight into the content today. So thanks for hanging out. So stuff I want to say. First things first. Some of you know this. Some of you have come to this podcast because of this channel, and some of you are here for many other reasons. But for the last about 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, for a long time, I've been doing this thing called Productive Pastor. It started off as a podcast to fill up some energy that I had years ago in a different ministry setting. I was intending on doing a handful of episodes just to keep people off of my back, mainly my good friends who kept asking me questions about things. This was in the early days of social media, or the mid days before social media became the enemy, we could say. And it grew and grew and grew, and it lasted about a good 4.5 years, solid, almost 100 episodes in, probably 98 episodes in. And this past week, I've been thinking about this for months, and with some conversation with some other people, and for some reasons why, I decided to kill Productive Pastor. And to quote Neil Young, it's better to burn out than fade away. And Productive Pastor has been a fire that has been smoldering, will occasionally catch a flame. Sometimes we'll get back up to even throws off heat, but it's been interesting over the last year and a half. I've ultimately decided to dump buckets of water on it. And so July 1st is when this is happening. July 1st, just a few days from now, I will be deleting all Productive Pastor content from the interwebs. Inserting a quick edit here, because this was recorded before July 1st. It's now July 4th. The content's still up there. It'll be up there for a few more days. Download it while you can. Back to what I recorded several days ago. And some people have asked me, Chad, why it's still useful. A lot of people have benefited from it. You know, I'm just going to do it so I don't get sucked into it again. I still get a decent amount of emails of people asking for help, of some offers to do some work, that sort of thing. But I've decided that for right now, the best thing for me to do is to focus on one thing, and to focus on all that one thing. And I'll still be doing a little tiny bit of ancillary work with some other people, but those are people who I care about deeply. And it's pretty much the point I want to do things that cause immediate good. And just not there anymore. Not saying I'll never be back there, but deleting all of the content. I'm saving it, so it's not going away. It's not disappearing into the netherworld, but I'm deleting it off the internet to keep me from being sucked back into it. I am keeping a couple things open. There is a Productive Pastor Facebook group that I do like a lot. There's about 700 people in it. That's staying alive. But that's about it for right now. So major decisions. That was a huge piece of me, something I spent a lot of time and in many ways kind of got me to where I am right now. But as Neil Young says, better to burn out than fade away. So buckets of water going on it. If you want those episodes, you need to go download them now. Best way to do that's off of iTunes. And I'm killing the feed and everything as of July 1st. So make sure you get that stuff. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I want to talk more about Bible reading. This past weekend, I preached a sermon called Eyes and Ears. It will be uploaded on this feed on Stuff I Want to Say. Let me know. Hey, listen, hit me back on the socials at Rev Chad Brooks. If you want me to post all the sermons, because I can easily post all the sermons here. But and that was something I thought about for a while, but just let me know. I want to hear back from you if you want sermons on here. It won't replace this content, but that sermon will be posted here. And all that stuff. So one of the things I preached about was eyes and ears, and it's this phrase that goes throughout Scripture that I am enamored with, I'm fascinated with. I even named my elected master's thesis on preaching Revelation. I'll leave links to that in the show notes if you were a masochist and want to read 100 pages of an academic writing on why you should preach Revelation. But I even named that paper Ears to Hear. It's a phrase I'm just enamored with. It's part of the core values for us here at Foundry. But at the back end of it, I shared some things about having ears to hear and the things we can do to help it and the things we can do to hurt it. And both help and hurt, I had Scripture on there. I had a help that we need to be in Scripture. I had a hurt that if we neglect Scripture, I am becoming more and more and more and more and more convinced of the power of Scripture in our lives and what does it mean for us to have it in a regular, repeated fashion. And what I want to talk about today is really one of the things that I said there is that there's not a special secret rhythm or reading plan you need to find. There's not an edition of Jesus Calling that you haven't found yet that's going to radically change your life. And I say that because people just many times have all sorts of questions or issues with reading Scripture. I did a big survey a few years ago. Not a few, like a year ago, maybe 6 months ago. And I got like about 400 responses back. I'd asked people what's tough about reading Scripture. And so many people said time, which is a legitimate issue, which we're not going to talk about today. But a lot of other people, like an equal number, it might have been the biggest one. I can't remember. They said that they just didn't know what was going on. And so many people tell me they believe the Bible. They want to believe the Bible. They want to read the Bible, all these sorts of things. And we just get hung up on how to do it. And so if you're listening to this, I want to tell you something. Don't worry about that. One of the things that I am learning right now is I've read through the Bible a bunch. I've read through the Bible a lot. It's something that a friend of mine named Aaron Mansfield got me doing years ago, doing these 90-day Bible reads. And that was just Genesis, Revelation, just straight like 14, 15, 16 chapters a day. And you wouldn't jump around. In fact, the only time I've really read the Bible jumping around was the very first time I read the Bible. And I had a yearly plan, and that was a tough thing for me. And I remember being like New Year's Eve at my in-laws' house, like trying to do like 20 days worth of reading. But I was just determined to finish it. And so right now I'm in a 180-day read with some other friends of mine, some folks that work for us at Foundry. And for the very first time, I'm actually enjoying jumping all around Scripture. And I did not start doing this until several months ago. And I was using just the daily office readings for a while before I started this plan with them. And the thing that's just wild about it is when we approach Scripture expecting to experience God, we're going to do it. And I'm telling y'all right now, this morning I was reading a story out of 1 Samuel that I have read. I've got a couple different reading strategies going right now, and one of them is I typically kind of do a deep dive into a book for a couple of months. And 1 Samuel is my book right now, and so I've probably read the first 10 chapters of 1 Samuel 7 or 8 times in the last couple of weeks. And this morning, my reading for my 180-day plan was 1 Samuel chapters 1 through 7. And I'm like pulling all of this stuff out of it that I have not seen in all these previous readings within the last couple of weeks in the beginning of 1 Samuel. That there is just something about when we know and willfully go to Scripture saying, God, no matter what I read today, I believe that I can encounter and experience you. And so, I mean, you can take Leviticus. I read Deuteronomy a few months ago and like had all sorts of crazy just thoughts and prayers and just life-changing moments reading a book that a lot of people would think is rather mundane and boring. And so there's not a perfect plan. That the biggest thing that you can do is just simply go and do it. Now, a couple of things that I want to share that I think are pretty rad that are, if you're wanting to do this, is there's these new Scripture journals. Crossways makes them the ESV translation, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I'm growing to like it. If you want to just begin reading the Bible, you can get these things in like single books. Another thing I'm doing right now is I read through one gospel just as much as I can over the course of a month. And I buy these scripture journals, and they're like $6, $7. It's like a paperback book. So I can just beat it up, take it everywhere, throw it in my back pocket, throw it in the truck. It just kind of goes everywhere with me. If you want to begin reading the Bible, you've never done it before, I'm going to tell you right now, just go to Amazon. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. Go get the one for the Gospel of John, okay? And just start reading it. But just encounter it and just open it up. And every time you open it up, just pray a short prayer. That's your words, but this is along the lines of, Jesus, whatever you want to show me inside of this, you have the ability to show me. So I'm going to look for it. But just get into it. And I'm telling you, it won't drop. It won't remain void. All of those sorts of things. But that's stuff I want to say. I said we might have other things that come up. You know, honestly, nothing up really that interesting is coming up in my mind. But I'm doing my darndest, y'all. Doing my darndest to bring this into a weekly show. Got cool stuff cooking. Got some other things I've talked about going. But just hit this up. Socials at Rev Chad Brooks. Would love to hear what you think about this. If you digging this, make sure you review and rate on the place where you are listening to this at. But until then, I'm Chad Brooks. This is stuff I want to say.